friends. Welcome to Tales from the Steps. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. If you remember, we're reading The Spider Stampede. And don't forget about Lucky here, our Patrick Lucero branch friend who's going to join us for the story. So, the two brothers, if you remember, got turned into spiders. And as they were trying to escape from a toad, their two friends that are rats kind of saved them from the toad and then from the giant crow that was trying to eat them. All of a sudden, Miss Pettypots showed up and trapped them in a jar to save them from the crow. So we're going to pick up from where we left off, and actually, it's going to be the last two chapters of the book. So we'll finish up this book today with the chapter called A Bit of Gas. Oh dear, roared Pettypots in a slow, deep voice. Time to get you fixed up. Josh felt quite seasick as their plastic tub swung along in the old lady's hands. He clung on tightly to the stout, see-through silk cables that he had unexpectedly produced. He was rather proud of his web, in fact, even if it had come out of his backside. Danny was hanging on too, his furry face looking rather green. Now what? He whimpered. Josh thought hard. He didn't think Pettypots would hurt them deliberately, but maybe she would want to experiment on them. After all, it sounded as she knew who they were. She must be pretty excited. She had succeeded in turning two mammals into spiders. At last they reached the huge dark cave of her laboratory behind the shed. She set their tub down on a gigantic table and peeled off the lid. She spoke to them, but it was too roary and loud and slow to make any sense. Her big warm gusts of breath smelled like cheese. A short while later, there were two thuds and two dark bundles wrapped in white material bounced down between them. They smelled fantastic. Danny suddenly realized how incredibly hungry he was. These were flasks of hot, meaty soup. He was sure of it. He could smell it. He scuttled across to one of them and quickly ripped off the wrapping. The flask had 6 legs, 2 wings, and an anxious expression. Oh boy, but Danny didn't stop to think about this. Yum, the soup was great. It was only when he gulped it all down that he noticed the look on Josh's face. His brother's mandibles were stuck up straight like shocked fingers. One of his eyes twitched. Nice lunch, he whispered. Yeah, admitted Danny. Our blue bottle soup. It's not Mom's, but not bad. He shuddered and felt a little queasy. Oh, said Josh, and Danny agreed with him. The tub was tipping up and they were sliding out onto the tabletop. The surface was cold stone of some kind, quite smooth. Now a glass bowl was slammed upside down over them. Through a rough gap in the top, a yellowish fog was hissing and blooming down. She's killing us. We're done for, whimpered Danny. But Josh thought he was wrong. It could be much easier to kill them with a shoe than with gas. A few seconds later, though, he wasn't so sure. His head felt funny, and his legs gave way, and his ears were muffled. And can't say I ever thought you two would be welcome in my lab, but today's changed my mind, and no mistake, said Pettypots. She had stopped roaring, and her mammoth face was now back to its usual size. Danny realized. He sat up, his legs, just the two of them now, dangling off the edge of the table. My back, what, you could, he spluttered. Yes, I know what you mean, she said, beaming. Her brown eyes were lively behind their rather smeary glasses. Now Josh sat up, making similar noises. I know exactly what you want to say. Why on earth would I change you both into spiders? Yes? Well, I didn't, not deliberately. I was having a crack at changing your little pea-soaked dog into a spider, I admit. But then when you blundered in and got the switch spray on your legs instead, I did try to stop you from
running off into danger. You're lucky to be alive. If I hadn't found you in time, stamped on that toad, frightened those rats off, and then whipped you away from that blackbird, you'd be floating some creatures digestive juices by now. Friends, hold on 1 second, okay? Just needed a little drink of water. Sorry about that. I had a little tickle in my throat. Okay, let's just carry on here. Well, thanks, muttered Josh. But how did you find us? Asked Danny. We were tiny. Ah, said Petty Potts. She held up a small device that looked a bit like a mini flashlight. Blue light flashed on the end of it, and it gave off a crackling noise. This is a switch-E detector. It only works within about 10 feet of a switch-head creature. But it's a help when they wander off. It gets brighter and louder the closer I get. You do realize we could be dead by now, thanks to you, said Danny, glaring at her. Or if your gadget thingy hadn't worked, we'd be spiders for life. No, you wouldn't. The switch spray doesn't last. Petty Pot sighed and shook her head. I haven't quite perfected it, but I also have an antidote for emergencies, which I just used on you. Though you might like a little bit of a snack first. So I dropped in a couple of flies, already prepared, by another spider behind my fridge. I guess it was Danny who scoffed one, wasn't it? Danny nodded, looking a little green. So tell me, what does it taste like? She perched on a stool and stared at him. Danny stared back at her, horrified. And how was it to be a spider? It must have been so exciting. She was nodding and smiling at both of them now. There was a notebook and a pen in her hand. Spider Switch is my latest spray. I wasn't sure it would work, so it's an arachnid serum, not an insect one. And of course, I've never tried any of my switch sprays on mammals until today. So what does it feel like? Danny snapped. He jumped off the table. Well, what do you think it feels like, you crazy witch? He squawked. Terrifying, that's what. We've been nearly flattened, drowned, eaten, and pecked to death. Petty Pot sighed again and nodded some more. I can see it's been a bit upsetting for you. Why don't you come to tea tomorrow and tell me all about it then? You must be joking, said Danny. We will never, ever set foot on this side of the fence again, ever. And don't you ever come over to our side. If you want to find out what it feels like to be changed into a spider, switch yourself. They jumped off the table and they ran back home barefoot, scraping through the gap in the fence at high speed and never looking back. Back in her lab, Petty Pot smiled to herself. She picked up a little red velvet box from a high shelf. She lifted the lid, revealing 6 shiny glass cubes. Each had a tiny hologram of an insect or a bug inside it, and a series of strange symbols running along beneath it. Danny would have recognized them. Last week he'd been to an ancient Egypt exhibition at school. He would have said they were hieroglyphics, the many pictures that made up the ancient Egyptian alphabet. To Petty, though, these were code, the most amazing code to the most amazing formula in the world, if you know how to crack it. And Petty knew. Petty ran her fingers lovingly across the cubes before closing the box. She returned it to the shelf. Then she picked up the green velvet box beside it. She opened this one with a sigh. Inside was a single glass cube with a tiny lizard hologram inside it and more of the hieroglyphics. There were 5 other square dents. Empty. Petty's smile vanished. She thwacked her forehead with her palm. Oh, you stupid, stupid old woman. Had to get your memory burnt out, didn't you? What if you never find them again, eh? Then you'll never get the next code, and you'll never get any farther than bugs. Next chapter, here today. Daddy, I can't believe you're not eating your cake, said Mom. She stared at Danny's uneaten dessert in astonishment. Danny gave her a wobbly smile. It's just that I'm still full since lunch. When he remembered what he'd eaten last, his smile went even more wobbly. He ate the insides of a bluebottle earlier. Bluebottle is an insect, by the way, friends, said Josh, through a mouthful of his chocolate cake. Danny flinched. He wasn't quite dead, either. Ugh, you two are so revolting and creepy, shuddered Jenny. Her hair was still wrapped up in a towel. She had only got out of the bath 5 minutes ago. She could have set a world record for staying in a bath reading magazines. Stop talking about disgusting things. I'll kill you both. Not again, moaned Danny. You've already tried twice today. He got up and went into the yard with his cake. He went to the shed, knelt down, and then put the plate down next to him. Josh followed him. What are you doing? He asked. Seeing if Scratch and Sniff are in, said Danny. They told us they live under our shed, remember? Oh, yeah, said Josh. He sat down next to Danny. We never did thank them for saving our lives. Behind them were squeaks, and the familiar snouts of Scratch and Sniff emerged. They twitched at the lovely scent in the air. This is to say thanks, said Danny, and he tipped the cake off the plate. You probably can't really work out what I'm saying, but thanks anyway for looking after me and Josh. Sniff clasped her little paws together. She rolled her eyes with delight. No frosting on it, said Danny. See you around, said Josh. Their friends bit into the cake and dragged the whole thing back under the shed with little grunts of effort and delight. Maybe we won't, said Danny. I think we should probably just forget the whole thing. Nothing like that will ever happen again. We've boarded up the fence so Piddle can't get through, and we will never go next door ever again. So right, said Josh. I love wildlife, but I don't want to be it. Danny and Josh ran inside. Jenny was holding her hairdryer. The cord was stretched around to the outlet just outside the downstairs bathroom, where she liked to do her hair and makeup. She stopped down and ripped the plug out of the socket, puffing and glaring at Mom through a curtain of wet hair. How many times do I have to tell you, Jenny, snapped Mom. Stop drying your hair over the sink. No, shouted Danny. Let her dry her hair over the sink. It saves lives. Jenny and Mom stared at him, and Josh, who was nodding vigorously in agreement. I tell you, Mom, said Jenny. She pointed at them with the hairdryer. They're another species, these two. Another species. The end. So this next part is called Top Secret. For Petty Pot's eyes only. This is an entry into Miss Petty Pot's journal, or her diary. The subject is Josh and Danny Phillips made a breakthrough. Those ghastly 8-year-olds from next door got sprayed by mistake. Managed to rescue them, though, before they got eaten. Asked about being a spider was like, but they were hysterical. We'll try again tomorrow. Good news, they can't get away from me. They live next door. And as they are children, nobody will ever believe what happened, so my secret is safe. And anyway, I think it's high time I had some assistance on the Switch project. I've been working alone for far too long. If only I could remember what happened to the rest of my research. I know I put the code for switching creatures to reptiles in the crystal cubes, as I did for the bugs and insects formula. And I know I hid the cube somewhere safe. Too safe. Safe for even me. I just can't remember. Victor Crouch has a lot to answer for. I'll get my revenge on him for burning out chunks of my memory and trying to steal my life's work. If I ever see him again, I'll switch him into a cockroach and stamp on him. But with those two young brains to help me, I might be able to find the lost reptile switch cubes and finally rediscover all my brilliant work. I'll recruit Josh and Danny tomorrow. I'm sure I can persuade them to help me with my research and also to continue the hunt for the missing cubes. Yes, I'm sure I will find a way to convince them. After all, what boy wouldn't want to transform into a giant python or a crocodile one day? All right, so it sounds like Miss Pettypot has got her plan hatched to recruit the boys to help her with her Switch project. You know, there is a whole series of these books at the library, so you can come to the library, check them out, put them on hold, and come pick them up. So I really encourage you guys, if you liked this, to check out the other books in the series and find out what happens to Miss Pettypots and the brothers, and find out if they get turned into any other sorts of creatures. So we're going to take a little break from Tales from the Stacks, and
tune back in maybe sometime in September and we will start a new book, okay? I've had a lot of fun, and so is Lucky. So please come to the library and see us, okay? We'll talk to you soon. Bye.